I got it.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to be with you here today. And we are talking about the art of standing out. So, some of you might be heading to Grace Hopper in a couple of weeks. Others, you might have different networking opportunities or other conferences on your radar. Really, our objective is for you to be able to go into any networking room and confidently take up space, be yourself, feel like you are able to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself, and really just be able to shine bright without having to worry too much about some of the details, because we'll talk about those details today. This is a workshop that is being presented by Code Your Dreams. So, for those of you who are going to Grace Hopper in a couple of weeks, we're part of the Pitch Her competition. So, definitely join us during that day. We are a nonprofit based in Chicago. We do tech education programs for both youth and adults here in the US and East Africa, and soon Mexico. And we are just really interested in seeing a more diverse and accessible tech sector. So we do programs for students as young as kindergarten all the way up through adults. And just to introduce myself, my name is Bree. I'm the executive director and founder at Code Your Dreams. My background, when I first got to college, I had never heard of computer science before, but it was a space that I found to be super exciting. At the same time, I felt really intimidated by the space at first. I remember walking into my first intro to computer science class. Everyone was already typing on their computer, coding, and I had no idea what they were doing. So I sat there feeling like, how is it the first day of intro and I'm already behind? That experience has stayed with me really for my entire career. So when I did break into tech as a data scientist, I also noticed, wow, I am the only female on this team, and there really is a lack of diversity on so many teams in technology. So in wanting to really make a difference, help create more accessible pathways into tech for people who were like me, where I had never heard of this thing, I didn't think that I perhaps belonged in the industry. That's why I started Code Your Dreams. And I am so thrilled that we have Cindy with us today. So I will kick it off to my co-host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy, for those of you that just joined us. So I am an associate board member at Code Your Dreams, and I also work for Relativity, which is a legal software company, as a project manager in their service delivery operations. I have no technical background, so my journey into tech is very unique. I pivoted during the pandemic, like I think many did. I previously worked in dental hygiene and I worked in interior design. So those were two industries that were sort of crumbling once the whole COVID crisis hit. And I found a fellowship through my company Relativity, and where I was trained on their software, and I was sort of immersed into this new world of technology. I also, sort of not being in the tech industry or being familiar, had to find a way to sort of pivot and make this path for myself in the tech industry, especially here locally in Chicago, because Chicago is becoming such a tech hub, especially for startup companies. And so I have been officially in the tech world in a role for about 2 years now. And I'm just excited to share with you all what I've learned, some tips and tricks while you're going to these conferences on how to just feel better and feel more secure with what it is that you're coming with. And I think that just taking up space in these spaces is really important. And the next step really will be immersing yourself and putting that personal brand to everything that you do. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share my experience with you all, and hopefully hear some really great pitches today.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. So going into today's agenda, you can really think of it in three parts. First, we're going to talk about developing your own personal brand. Next, we'll go into crafting your storytelling. And then finally, we'll get into some Q&A, as well as some live pitch practice. So if anyone's interested in getting real-time feedback, you'll have the chance to do so today. Of course, you're not forced to do any real-time pitching. It's just for anyone who's interested. All right. So getting into what is personal branding? Does anyone in this room have thoughts when you think of personal branding?
Yeah, feel free to drop it in the chat, unmute yourselves. I'll throw out there, when I was beginning my journey, I really thought of brands in general, like logos. I thought like Nike, just do it, and those sorts of things. And really they're not different, but I see somebody has no idea, which is perfectly normal too. I think personal branding could be a variety of things, something unique to oneself. I think, yes, for sure. How other people perceive or recognize you and what you have to offer, definitely a part of your personal brand. Selling yourself when you talk, yes, there's definitely some self-pitching here.
Yeah, and to add to that, it really just comes down to who you are and how you want others to see you. So, the reason why we do spend time on personal branding is we want you to feel confident about, what you're putting out there in the world. It's almost like your personal brand is a gift. I'm going to tie it up in a nice, pretty bow. So let's get started talking about developing your personal brand. So aligning your work with your passions and aligning your passions with your branding. Now, I do want to just give a little bit of rationale, and I'll go over this very quickly. You'll have this slide to look back on, but why is personal branding really important for your career? First is differentiation. So, you are applying for a job. Maybe there's 100 or even 1,000 other applicants. How do you stand out? Who are you and what is your unique value proposition? Now, it's not about competing and having a better unique value proposition. It's more about knowing yourself and knowing what you bring to the table. The second is opportunities, right? If you have a really strong personal brand, and people might think of you as someone who might be a good speaker on a panel or to do a talk or to be a mentor maybe for a program. The third is credibility. So having a strong personal brand, a confident personal brand makes people feel confident in you with how you're expressing yourself, whether that's as a software engineer, a designer, a student, whatever it may be. Within networking, this is what we're going to really focus on today. Knowing your personal brand, what you talk about, what you're interested in, it will just make networking easier for you. And people will remember you for your strong personal brand. And finally, career advancement. It really can help you level up your career.
And so I'll just add on to this slide. I think while these are sort of high level, really direct words to describe personal branding, I will give you all an example sort of this week in my professional career. At my company, we invited someone to speak for Hispanic Heritage Month. And what really surprised me was, as this individual was sharing her story, there were so many intersections, I think, with my story and my journey into tech and things that were unique to me. So like being a mom, not coming from a technical background, being a first generation student, being the first in our families to do this. And I think something that really stuck out to me from that was just through this telling of the story and this branding, right? I found so many ways to connect with this individual. And that's really sort of what the purpose of this personal branding is, aside from the obvious professional benefits that we get from it. So opportunities and networking. What you're doing is you're also giving someone else the ability to identify to something in your story so that they feel empowered to go and share that as well, which is sometimes not really easy for many people, especially those with non-traditional backgrounds. And so really think of it as like, what makes you unique, but also how can you use that to help someone else? And it was interesting because I found so many of the executives at my company in awe. They were just so surprised at how much she had done. And it made me reflect and realize I should share some more of these aspects of my life because there are other people who have gone through this or who identify with this, and it can help me. So it is not only vital to your career, but I think it's vital to your personal development as well, and the relationships that you foster as you go through this new industry or this new journey. But also the people that are looking at you, right? How did you get into that role? Once you're in that role, there are students, there are interns, there are people from different industries looking to pivot, and they will look at you and say, how did you do that as a woman, as a person of color, as someone that is not normally given this opportunity? How did you leverage that to advance in your story? And so as we're going through this and as we begin to ideate on what exactly makes each of us unique, I'd like for you all to just sort of keep that in the back of your mind. Sometimes we think that these attributes are more direct to the work that we do. So like being organized, being able to lead, being self-driven, but there are things that we do every day that give us other attributes like resilience, like being able to say, for 3 years, I had to travel 2 hours to this one position, whether it was technical or not. You did all that planning in order for that to happen, which a lot of people don't do. So keep in mind some of the things maybe that you've had to overcome that you may think this is normal. No, most people have to do this, and use that when you're thinking of what fits into your personal brand.
So we're going to go through a few examples. Cindy and I were thinking of who might be good examples for this. We're hoping that, do people know Michael Jordan?
Feel free to put a Y or an N for yes or no in the chat. Yes. Lots of yeses here. And I guess if we had to throw something out there, when we think of Michael Jordan's personal brand, what is the first thing or one of the first things you think of? Basketball, that's for sure. Go Bulls. Yep. Greatest of all time. All right. Do we want to get into the details, Bree?
Yeah, we can get
Shoes.
into the
Yes, that is a
details.
big one.
So I know I put a lot of words on this slide, apologize for it. But Michael Jordan is kind of like an onion. You keep peeling back and there's just more and more layers to him. So he's in both the sports and the business sector, and there's a lot of pieces about Michael Jordan that creates this compelling personal branding that he has, not just as being an amazing basketball person, but also being a leader. And the type of branding that he has, it's really consistent across everything that he does, whether it's in his athletic abilities, his shoe businesses, how he gives back to the community. Everything really is very consistent, which is why Cindy and I both thought that he was a great example of someone with a really strong personal brand. Because he's not just a basketball player, he talks a lot about, how he influences culture around the world. He sees himself as almost a global ambassador. He's definitely a role model for people, for someone who's put in a lot of hard work, has a lot of grit, and has just done a lot over the course of his life.
And I think an interesting aspect of his story is that a lot of his personal branding came from his mom, because she saw the things that he was able to do. And so that's another thing. Think of the way that people describe you when they're meeting you or introducing you to someone else. What would they say? What words do they use to describe you? I think a lot of his personal branding, I watched the Nike movie that came out sort of around how he got started. And it's interesting to me because he didn't really want to do it. He wasn't even a huge fan of the shoe. It wasn't until his mom really advocated for him and said, like, you need to do this, put your face on there, make this change. But just to keep in mind, it is not always obvious to some of us, like what our skills or talents are. And we're very often told, like, hey, no, you're worth this. So think of how other people describe you, because I think Michael Jordan is a great example of someone who maybe didn't realize all the potential they had, but they had that nudge. And so think of the mentors that you have in your life, and the things that they are also great at, because there's a reason why you seek their mentorship.
And we have a couple more examples, but I'm just going to fly past them. Please feel free to revisit these. So we also look at Sheryl Sandberg, as well as Kristen Walker, putting in some more tech examples. So now we get to do a hands-on activity. I have both a QR code as well as a URL here. So please download this worksheet. I will put it in the chat. There we are. So I'm going to give everyone just a minute to open up this worksheet. And this is an activity to get all of us thinking about what can go into our own personal brands. So we're gonna start. Both Cindy and I have pre-filled out this matrix and are going to share with you all some of our answers, just to give you a little bit of inspiration about, what your answers might look like. And then we're all together going to have time to fill this out for ourselves and do a little bit of sharing. All right. So diving into the first component is values and beliefs. So you can think of this as what drives you. So what principles drive your decision making, but also which causes or beliefs are you passionate about? So we have an example here: integrity, passion, and creativity. For mine, I came up with empowerment, equitable education access, and student-centered. Cindy, what did you come up with?
Yeah, so I had resilience, I had tenacity, and I also had equity in my answers. And that is because I am passionate about not necessarily equality, but equity. So people having the same access to opportunities to be able to execute on those, and resilience, because I think that is something that many of us do on a day-to-day basis. Some of us, struggle with it a little bit more. But those are my top three.
Awesome. And then getting to the second component, that's skills and expertise. So what are the things that you are really good at? So maybe, when people think of you at work or your peers, what are three words that, or 3 skills that you're known for. Or maybe this is a reach skill. What skills do you want to get recognized for? So examples could be public speaking, data analysis. For me, I wrote building programs, teaching, listening to others. Cindy, what about you?
I have connecting, engaging, and organizing. And I separated connecting and engaging because I think it's one task to bring 2 things together. It's another task to make sure that those 2 things are actually doing something with each other and not just there existing. And then organization, I think, is surprisingly something that lacks in the technology world, which is why we have so many project managers and things like that. But I think things can get hectic very quickly. And so it's definitely a good skill to have and highlight.
Awesome. Thank you. And feel free to start typing your answers as we're talking through this. We would love to hear some of your ideas as well. So next we have personality and style. So some of those adjectives of how others might describe you. So we have some examples like charismatic and detail-oriented. Mine, I wrote excited, positive, and inspired. I say inspired because I feel like I get inspired a lot by my students, by other leaders, by really everyone that I surround myself with. So not calling myself inspiring, but that I live a life where I'm constantly inspired. What about you, Cindy?
Yeah, so mine were analytical, a leader, and also outgoing is what I had as mine. I see we do have a response in the chat, and so we see empathetic and positive attitude, which I think are also really great qualities to have.
Awesome. And then we have visual identity. This especially comes in if, let's say, you're speaking on a stage or you're showing up to either in-person or virtual networking opportunity. How do you visually present yourself? So examples we have are professional, artistic. I'm usually wearing pink. I wear pink. And my Code Your Dream shirt. About 20 Code Your Dream shirts. I wear them every day. And that is basically my brand. What about you, Cindy?
Yeah, so for me, it's my glasses. I get a lot of compliments on my glasses, and I do change them up. So it's glasses. It's also being Latina. I think that that's a really obvious sort of characteristic that sometimes is really helpful because I'm the only one in the room, and maybe there's one other one, and we can point each other out. But yeah, those were the 2 that I came up with.
Okay, so we're getting to the next page. Here's where we get into the unique value proposition. This can be such a toughie. So what sets you apart from others? So what do you offer that maybe is different, or how you've demonstrated this value in past situations? Now, this doesn't mean that you are the single person in the entire world who, has this given value or skill set. It more means of, how do you differentiate yourself from others? Sure, there are other people who might share the same unique value proposition, and that's okay. So mine, we have examples. So one example is problem solving under pressure. Mine is empowering tomorrow's change makers. What about you, Cindy?
Mine is the ability to lead and execute multiple projects at one time.
That's a really for project management. um, Awesome. And this definitely, it's helpful when it does align to what you currently do or the position that you're reaching for. Then we get into online presence. It's the one that I know I'm still working on. So, where can people find you? Examples, LinkedIn, a personal blog. For me, I post a lot on LinkedIn and nowhere really else. So, I also put in like a reach platform that I want is I really want to update my personal website. I haven't updated it in over a year, but I want to have this be a platform. You, Cindy.
For me, it is LinkedIn, Instagram, Slack, Facebook. I'm pretty much on all the socials. But it is mainly LinkedIn for me. However, I probably do have to look into getting a personal website now that I want to grow my personal branding, and showcase all of the things that I've done. And so if you have nowhere to start, I think LinkedIn is a great place because it makes it really easy for you. And they sort of give you the framework for beginning to identify all the things you've done. And hopefully you all are noticing that by using this template, you can almost write yourself like a LinkedIn bio using all of these words and just sort of putting them into sentences if you don't have one already, because I know sometimes it's a little intimidating to write about yourself or to think like what are the things that you do, or what are the things that you're good at outside of perhaps your day-to-day responsibilities. And so just something to think about as you all are working through this is we're really giving you the framework to write a bio for anything, whether you'd like a speaking opportunity, whether you want to put it on your LinkedIn, maybe you want to apply to a position, but really sort of take this framework and keep it and refer back to it whenever you're looking for that inspiration.
And then next we have goals and aspirations. So we have questions like where do you see your personal brand in 5 years, in 10 years? Are there specific milestones that you're aiming for? So an example could be, I really want to become a thought leader, or I want to start my own podcast. Mine is, I want to expand Code Your Dreams. What about you, Cindy?
Mine is very big. I would like to be president of the United States for various reasons. But the main one really being I want to empower other people with the expertise to help make the decisions that it is that we need, whether that is for a country or a company. I think I definitely want to grow into that leadership because I do believe in uplifting everybody's voices and creating that equity that I talk about. But once again, this is as big as you'd like for it to be. Maybe you want to go to the moon. Maybe I also would like to go to the moon. That is not in my 5-year plan though. But for me, it's really to just gain a leadership position with the best one, or with the greatest one being the president, so I can empower people to help make our country better.
Awesome. I will let you go to the moon, Cindy. I'm good right here. And then last we have audience slash target market, right? So who are you trying to connect with? It's not every single person in this world. Let's think of the specific groups of people who you feel like your message really connects with, or who might benefit from what you have to offer. So an example could be young entrepreneurs. Mine is I really put down different groups, tech professionals, parents, and potential collaborators. What about you, Cindy?
So mine was thought leaders in other industries, parents, and also children, because I myself am a mom. And so that's how I became involved with Code Your Dreams. I'm involved with many things at my daughter's school. But that is really where my focus comes from. The fact that I know my daughter has to live in this world once I'm gone, and ensuring that it is better for her and for everyone that comes after her. But yeah, I would be excited to see if anybody would love to share any of the things that they came up with, anything that you're struggling, maybe that we could help you articulate. Um, yeah, let's open it up.
Feel free to share in the chat, or of course, unmute yourself either way. Feel free to share, just a few words or whatever you'd like.
Hi, I'm Gina. Sorry, if I could, that'd be great. So I'm new to the tech world. I was a veterinary technician supervisor for over 10 years. I loved it. But after COVID, I was just kind of done with it. And so I transitioned into the tech field. I went to a boot camp, graduated. And so I'm having a really hard, I guess, struggling with transitioning into the tech world and kind of branding my supervisor animal world and transferring that into the software engineering world. So I always have to like explain myself, I feel like.
Yeah, I really relate to that. And I think that the amazing thing about tech is that so many people are career switchers in the industry. So instead of if you can in your mind, instead of framing it as I have to explain to you why I've transitioned, think of it more as your story, your unique value proposition, your strength. By thinking of those transferable skills, how were you impactful in your previous position, and how does that make you a strong candidate or leader in the tech industry? So I'm sure there's probably an interesting story to tell of how you've gone from A to B. And yeah, a lot of times it's just putting that more positive spin. Do you have feedback, Cindy?
Yeah, so similarly, I came from like a healthcare background and interior design when I transitioned into tech, and I was worried about how those two things would translate. One thing that helped me, that I will say, Gina, is looking at the roles that you want to apply for. Like, begin to comb through job boards and read what they're looking for, like the requirements or like the skills, and begin to think about the things you did in your veterinary role. So like, for interior design, there was data and analytics there. Like, there were metrics that I needed to hit. And like, I didn't think of it in that way when I was working, but reading the skills necessary for a project manager, right? Being able to leverage data to run a project, like, I began to put those two together, because when you start looking at what everybody does, it's all process. And so it's really you injecting yourself into that process and showing how the skills that you have will work to that. And so my biggest advice would be, number one, look through job boards, and just begin to like look at those skills, so that when you're updating your resume, you can use those exact requirements that they're looking for in the role, but apply them to what you did at the veterinary. Because if you're a supervisor, I'm assuming there was data and analytics, like there were numbers you're checking every month or every day. You're checking in on processes, you are checking in on other people, which is not really something a software engineer does since they do their own work, but that is something you can leverage also as you grow in your role, because those are actually really sought after soft skills in the tech industry, believe it or not. Like, having the ability to communicate with other people, or just communicate to your manager, like, hey, I'm in a block, or things like that. Because I think once you're in the tech world, especially in software engineering, software engineers are very quiet. They do their work, they're very focused, which they should. That's kind of how it is. But that's what helped me, is I just like looked at project manager roles and I was like, great, what have I already kind of done from these, and how do I talk about what I did before in exactly in these terms. The other thing is, if you are able to join, like I started joining every group that was open, that was possible to my city, like women in tech, Latinas in tech, women in cybersecurity, women in project management. I started joining those groups and connecting with other people on LinkedIn that had those job roles, so I can see what was their history, how did they transition. And I found that a lot of them were working in like totally different industries, but it was once again asking them, like, what did you say? Like having a 15-minute coffee chat, which could also be intimidating on LinkedIn, reaching out to someone and saying, can we meet? But I would say at least half of those always turn into meetings, and they're super helpful, and somebody always wants to help and let you know how to leverage what you have. So that was a lot. Hopefully it made sense, Gina. But
It did. Thank
okay.
you.
Awesome question. Yeah, like an example could be, I love solving problems and working with people. I spent the past decade as a vet tech where I worked with over 1,000 patients, often delivering really hard news in a solutions focused way. This actually brought me to finding the tech industry where I'm able to solve problems at an even larger scale, continue to work with people. And after doing this tech boot camp, now I actually have those technical skills and I'm ready to, jump right in with the company and, really make an impact for the team. I think it's all about your telling your story and then being confident with that story. And of course, that was just an example. And I'm sure yours is even more impactful and meaningful. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, you're
Does anyone
oriented. That's another thing, you have to know a lot about a lot of animals and like how their treatment is. And that's a very, that's something you do as an engineer. You got to read code and like look at where you fix the code, and you may be used to that, like looking through, I don't know, labs and figuring things out for animals and being able to make that call or escalate it to the proper person.
Thank you so much.
Does someone else have thoughts or words that you wanted to share? If not, we can continue to move on. You all have this worksheet, but now we will be moving next part of our presentation. Now I'm thinking about, okay, so I have my personal brand. I know the content, but how do I actually craft that story? So really wanting to make sure that you feel confident, prepared, and as authentic as possible. Okay, we're not all our 100% authentic selves in a networking opportunity. We're all putting, are more professional forward than I would if it was just, myself and some friends. But we want you to feel like you're able to be yourself. So if you are thinking, I get nervous in a networking situation, then guess what? You are part of the majority. 74% of people also feel nervous when they're speaking in public. And I will say that when I first started in my career, I was terrified when I would have to speak in front of people or even just speak to people in a networking setting. I often felt like, I'm new to the industry. I don't have things to share that are very important. So I don't want, to bother someone when I'm not an impressive person. But what we really want all of you to know is that you all have so much to share, even if you're a student, even if you're just in the beginning of the industry, because you have so many experiences, perspectives, interests that are important for everyone. So just some tips. Something that helped me was just rehearsing in front of the mirror, rehearsing in front of friends, in front of advisors who I really trusted, just to get a little bit of feedback. You can even record yourself doing an elevator pitch and then analyze it yourself to see, oh, like I'm squirming a little. Maybe I should be a little more still. Or maybe you see, wow, I'm really still and rigid. Maybe I could use my hands. These are things that can be helpful. Oop. I find that taking deep breaths can be really, really helpful, especially before I'm going to do a different asserted speaking opportunity. So really taking advantage of your breaths. You can think about even just the muscles in your body, really intentionally thinking about them. Like, I'm going to start with my neck. Let me intentionally try loosening the muscles in my neck. Okay, now let me think about my shoulders, and kind of going through your body is another tactic. Other people really like sensory tactics. So, a lot of people like, let's see if I have these different fidget toys. Yes, that can just be helpful, right? You might not, when we're on Zoom and you can have this type of thing at a desk, it is helpful. If you're, out there in the wild doing networking, you can always like tap your thumb on your palm, and that's another tactic that people have for just feeling a little bit calmer. Other people will have something sensory in their pocket if they're starting to feel anxiety in this sort of setting. Even just like a little piece of sandpaper is something you can brush your thumb against. And then, of course, seeking professional training can be really helpful. There are different coaches when it comes to public speaking. You can even take a LinkedIn Learning or another online course to help you just train yourself on public speaking. All right. Well, actually, before we go to this next worksheet, I want to pass it over to Cindy if you have any tips.
Yeah, so I think I'll back up for a second and I'll share with you all. I spoke at my first national conference this year in Philadelphia. I flew over by myself. I literally applied myself, had no idea what to expect. And it was probably my largest speaking engagement yet. It was ironically about personal branding as well. I did touch on that. But one thing that really helped me is I carry like a tiny fidget. So like I like holding an item because what I do is I visualize that this item is holding all of my energy. And so if it's in my hand and I'm really nervous, then I just am like, all my nerves are here in my hand. They will come right back to me as soon as this is over. But like that is something that I do when I network. I am an extroverted introvert. So normally you probably would not see me waving or talking, especially if I'm working. But when I'm at a networking event, one of my primary goals, whether it's virtual, in person, is to touch base with 3 to 5 people that I've never met before, because that's really what the primary purpose of networking is. And I think in the beginning of my tech journey, I always gravitated towards the people that I knew because it felt very safe. But by challenging myself and by setting a specific number of people, as opposed to just like meet everybody, share your LinkedIn, connect, I made it very intentional. Like I'm going to connect with 3 to 5 people. I'm going to get their LinkedIn, or I'll share my LinkedIn. And I want to learn about their role. I made it solely about them. So there are questions that I would go to, like, what do you do? Why do you do it? How long have you done it? What would you be doing if you were not doing this? To begin to hear from other people, because I think that I personally needed to understand, like, is everyone in the tech space here because they know tech? Is it because they know someone? Is it because they see an opportunity? Like, what are people's intentions, and where do I fit into all of this, and what groups do I fit into? So for me, the biggest takeaways were at that speaking event every day, 3 to 5 people, although I did have tons of people coming up to me, but I made it intentional in the sense that I wanted to connect personally. So like I wanted to see that person and say, hey, I know you, so-and-so. Hey, what's going on, when I saw them at the next event. Because then you'll see that those relationships, it's very magnetic. They will begin to introduce you to other people, and you'll start going into other circles. And I think much like our life, the tech industry is like that. It's made of circles. And I say that in the sense of like, you start with like where you work. Maybe you're an engineer and you're friends with lots of other engineers. But when you begin to move out of that circle, you'll start to notice there's this whole other like tech ecosystem of directors or people that work in sales or customer success, and they rely on your work to do their work, right? But now you're brought up to this broader circle where you learn more about like, hey, maybe I don't want to do this one specific thing in tech that I do. Maybe I want to branch out and work with people. Maybe I want to manage them. And just setting those bars for yourself when you go into these events. Like when you go to Grace Hopper, tell yourself at this social thing, I will meet 3 people. I will share my LinkedIn QR code. I will ask them questions about what they do, find out about their company. I will meet 3 co-founders. Maybe that's what you'd like to do, meet founders, because you want to help them out. Think about what's important to you and center your goals around that.
I love that. Super strategic and like being intentional about what are your goals. So you're just not jumping in and feeling like, did I do this right? Was this good? Awesome. So we are now going to move to this worksheet. And again, Cindy, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, and I'm going to also drop the link in the chat in case anybody can't pull it up. Okay, so here we're sort of looking at our worksheet for networking and how to tell your story. I will share a few parts of my story I think that maybe are lesser known. They're not publicized anywhere. But I'm a cancer warrior, cancer survivor. I live with a very rare and incurable cancer. I don't like to center myself around that, but I sometimes, I don't even like saying that. I will back up. It's important for me to showcase that because I am not alone in that. There are so many other people that live with chronic illnesses, or terminal illnesses that are scared to share that, right? Because they don't want people to think, well, you're any less than. And I'm a mom. I had my daughter when I was 17, so I am a young mom. She's in middle school. And I share that as well because I think that it is very important to the person that I am. You can see why I'm as driven as I am. But looking at this next worksheet that we have, there are some strategies for connection while networking. And so kind of like I mentioned, being present, making sure, you don't have to talk to everyone, but a smile, a wave sometimes helps. I personally will stand by the doorway or the entrance because it's easier for me to just like let out a smile or be like, hey, what's up? Welcome. Volunteering is also a really great way to get yourself into places without forcing you to go out of your comfort zone because people sort of gravitate to you as a volunteer and they talk to you sort of without choice, and without thinking about it. And so being genuine, sharing those things when sometimes we share our stories and people come back and they say, hey, I think I remember you mentioned this or you said this. Feel free to own that. I think that we are transitioning today in our corporate world, whereas things before would have been like, be quiet, don't talk about that. Now we want you to talk about that because we want those differences to be showcased. We want to celebrate them because it is important for people to know like, hey, there's this many people with this that still do this and that thrive and excel. So some reflective questions for you to think about as you fill this worksheet out are like, when have I felt most genuine while networking? And for me, it is typically when I am involved with Latinas in tech events or any events with people of color, because I think culturally there is a different way that we communicate there. And I just feel most comfortable being my authentic self. And I think it's also when you go with a friend, if you can. I always try to recruit somebody. In fact, when I started out, I will be very frank, I was not great at networking, but I identified somebody else who broke into tech similar to me, and he was really great. He was a previous police officer, so he was really used to just initiating conversation. And he was my buddy at networking events. I did not talk. I did not introduce myself to new people. He was the one that would go up and just say like, hey, here's my QR code. This is my friend Cindy. This is what we do. And I looked at that and I really admired that. And I stuck with him and I sort of picked up on what he did. And it was literally that. It was that he came, he introduced me first. He talked about everything I did. And then he would say, okay, let's learn about you. But when I was breaking into the tech industry, I was not as confident as I probably should have been to be able to do that on my own. So look for the people that do that, because you'll learn from them. How can I ensure I'm present and attentive in future networking situations? This one is, it's sort of like what we do every day. It's nodding when the speaker is speaking at events. It is just coming up to say, hi, thank you, this is who I am. It is going up to the people hosting the event. That's also usually something that's pretty quick. You can get it out of the way. When you're at conferences, I typically do the whole stay after the speaker walks off the stage. I say, hi, my name is Cindy. Thank you for speaking. And it has actually resulted in me going to another event and someone saying, hey, you were at my last event at this panel. And I said, yep, loved it. Didn't have a chance to connect with you there, but I'm here now. So let's talk. And so this is really simple. It doesn't require you to talk or anything. It could just be active listening. We have storytelling techniques in networking pitches or your elevator speeches. This is kind of like how I'm talking to you all, telling you little stories sprinkled within this webinar. It's you being able to just say like, hey, this is a little bit about me. This is what I think, this is how I fit in. This is how our two paths intersect. Things like that, finding a way to connect with that person. So when you ask those investigative questions, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? What do you want to do? Look for the things that are similar with your story and begin to intertwine that and say like, great, like you are so interested in data and analytics. I would just love to lead the charge at my company for this sort of thing. What advice do you have? I this morning met with somebody in my industry in tech. They reached out to me because they saw the things I was doing in my community and were like, hey, can I take you for a coffee? Can I ask how you do those things? And I didn't expect nothing much, but they were just like, I just want to know how I can support any of the endeavors that you do because I see it all. And I just looked for the similarities in our story when we met for the coffee and like finding ways in which they could really help and be impactful here locally. Creating relatable characters, establishing a conflict. Everybody has them. You're a person. Everyone has a conflict, I feel like. So think about when you're going through college. I feel like that's a giant conflict everybody has that they have to resolve in their life. Think about your family. Think about the relationships that you uphold, the communities that you were in when you were growing up, and begin to establish that sort of setting for yourself. And strong. The strong ending is where you're at now. Like you're still here, you're still doing things, you're still moving ahead, and you're networking. So you're showing up for yourself. And so begin to talk about the things that you want to do, because people will listen to that. And then going back to like we were saying, those opportunities will come back up for you. For me, it was not very clear in the first year of me being in the tech industry. I had to keep creating those because not many people knew about me. But now I feel like when people mention my name or things like that, they're like, oh, okay, great. She volunteers a lot. We know who she is. Like she helps everywhere. And I also just don't want you all to leave with like, I need to go out and do 100 things. You don't. You just literally need to be yourself and talk about it. Like that's literally all you need to do. Just updating your bio on LinkedIn saying, I was here, now I'm here, but I want to be here. Will draw the people to you that need to be around in your circle, essentially. Because we all have different stories, we all have different paths, and they all intersect in some ways. It's just the ways moving forward that you want to leverage that. And so reflective questions on this sheet are just stories from your life or career. And we sort of touched on this, Gina, with like your veterinary experiences. How can I craft a narrative that resonates with the target audience? Once again, just looking at what it is that you want to do and thinking about what you've done and how you can do whatever it is that's out there. And then I think we're moving down, creating your elevator pitch. This is another thing I will be very transparent on. I've done worksheets and I've written down attributes, but this comes to you, I think, in the moment. And it's usually the things that you think of that you are most active in. And so for me, it's always being a mom. I always bring that up because that's just a thing that I do daily. It's working in tech. It is being an advocate just for underrepresented people here in Chicago. But you want to invite people to do this. So similar to my coffee chat today, I want to bring people in. So how do you want to be involved? Do you want to volunteer with Code Your Dreams? Do you want to mentor someone with Latinas in tech? Do you want to just give money? Is that what you're looking for? And you'd be surprised. There are people who are like, I just want to donate. Let me know what the best place is to donate. How can you refine your pitch, or what is the core message? Core message is you. And really, I would say looking at that worksheet, the first worksheet we did, think about your beliefs and your values, and that's it. Whatever that core belief is, if you think that tech should be accessible to everyone, then that is it. That's what you're telling people. Like, I am on a mission to make tech accessible, to make tech skills accessible to everyone, and they shouldn't have to pay crazy amounts of money. If you are looking to just sort of work in cybersecurity and you just want to contribute to a company's security processes and things like that, say that, because you will get connected to the right people, or someone will say, hey, I know someone that's in that. And then the authenticity into your story. Here's that vulnerability that I mentioned, and that the emotional aspect. There are lots of things I think culturally that could be seen as a vulnerability or emotional. Growing up as a Latina, I think there are lots of differences. I went to schools where I was very little. I was the only Latina, but I had to grow up with this view of like, the whole world is not like this. People will not ask me certain questions about my Latinidad, because there are certain spaces that I go into and it's embraced and people are just celebrating it. And other spaces where it's a reality of our world, and something that I'm still learning to deal with today, just to kind of close this out, is that when you do all of this, there is a chance people will be like, that is great, I'm moving on, and they don't care. Don't take it personally. And the thing that you should just tell yourself is that those that are supportive of you or the things that you like will be there, right? And nobody has to like you. And just always remember that. And sometimes your story, it's not because you're unlikable or anything. It's just because people have their own things that they're working through and they are confused. How did you do this? How are you resilient? How did you get through this situation? But I didn't. And I think that's just human nature. But it is something that I want to remind all of us not to take personally, because it can be difficult, especially when you're starting out. When I was not always received with like wide open arms and people were like, you're great. There were some people who would ask like, well, what makes you qualified to be in this space? What expertise do you have that could really help this company progress? And while I didn't have that answer, it wasn't an answer for me to have. It was just like, hey, this is who I am and what I do now. And this is what I can offer. And if for whatever reason we don't vibe, that's totally fine. Hopefully we can later down the road. And if we don't, it is what it is. But I would say, and Bree, you could jump in here, that is something I'm still working through, because I feel like, when you just want to do good or when you want to push forward, it's very difficult to see how people can push back against that or question it. But it's once again going down to people's experiences and the things that they relate to. And there are just a lot of people out there who don't know what it is to be resilient or to push through certain things, which is great, I think, if they've never had to do that. But don't ever feel discouraged to share those vulnerable parts of your story or to bring out emotions, because it is a very normal and natural human part of us, and it should come out. The people that are hiring us, the people that we meet, the people that we make relationships with, they should know about these parts of our lives, because they should be supportive of them, regardless of what happens, especially if you're committing to helping build someone else's company or in a role of that nature. It's just a part of being human. So please don't hang back from anything. I think there are ways to say things that maybe are not as harsh or direct, because I do think certain people, it's the way you receive. But that's why we work on our pitch. We pitch it to our friends. We pitch it to those close around us so they can give us that feedback. Like I was told, hey, Cindy, you're giving people too much stuff to be sad about. Like they don't want to hear all of that. And that was feedback that I understood, some of the things that some of my experiences are difficult, and they're not things that many people talk about openly, but it's the way that you're phrasing that message and sending that message to invite people to connect with you. And it's not always a bad thing. They weren't telling me to be quiet. It was just like, hey, think about the way that you're framing this and how you want it to resonate with your audience. Are you looking for them to sort of, be sad, or are you looking for them to be inspired? Do you want them to hear about how this happened and what you did coming out of it, as opposed to just eliciting that emotional response? So that was sort of a lot here on how to make the most out of our networking. Open to any questions or comments, and then Bree, if you want to jump in to add anything. It is personal branding. There's a lot of layers. I think it is very oniony. It starts with very basic, who are you, to, physical attributes. What nationality are you? What communities do you belong to? What are your religious or spiritual beliefs? Like it starts there, but then it begins to branch out to all of these other things that make you, the way that you interact with the world outside, the way that you interact professionally, the way that you interact with kids, with the elderly, with underrepresented communities. And then you begin to think about those things and how they're important to you, and on how large of a scale they're important to you. And once you refine all of that, I think it also makes it easier for you to move forward in the next step in your path.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cindy. That was incredibly helpful, and you gave us so much to think about. I will pause to see if there are any questions. And if not, we will have more time. Okay, so we have a question in the chat. What would be the duration of an elevator pitch? What would you suggest?
I say about a minute. 1 to 3 minutes, really. I know that there's like 30-second pitches. I don't think it's possible. I think 1 to 3 minutes is possible. It should be conversational. And like I said, using that first worksheet we had as a framework, the sentences will start to like form. And I do I call it the office recording, where like I put my phone in front of me and kind of similar to the office, I like read off a script and I just sort of talk. Especially when I'm going into new events, because you want to reframe whatever the messages that you're sending depending on the setting that you're in. And so 1 to 3 minutes I think is perfect. It starts to be sort of second nature when you're doing it so often. And if anybody tells you 30 seconds, don't panic. They may just be telling you that to get through it. But I would say 1 to 3.
Yeah. I think that's really a good like middle ground, especially if you're, trying to really convey who you are. The other thing I'll say is just every situation is different. So your elevator pitch is going to be different in almost every situation. So almost try to like see who the other person is and put yourself in their shoes to think, okay, well, what are they looking to hear? What might resonate for them? So, for example, I know many of us are going to Grace Hopper. So, if you are looking for an internship or a job, you're at the Career Expo and you walk up to a recruiter. It could be even a short introduction like, hi, my name is Bree. I go to college in Seattle. I am a creative problem solver. I really enjoy X, Y, and Z, and I'm looking for software engineer internships. Can you tell me more about them? Versus, let's say you are waiting in line for a session. You don't have to give an elevator pitch to someone who's standing in front of you. You could simply say, hi, my name is Bree. How are you? Or how are you liking the conference so far? Not every networking situation has to be an elevator pitch, which is why you'll see here we're not actually writing elevator pitches. We're merely just giving kind of thought pieces to help you figure out, what you're able to say and how you want to brand yourself in these types of situations. So anywhere between 10 seconds to 3 minutes I feel is probably good, just depending on the situation. And then two, let's say you meet someone who you're a student and they're a student, right? Your elevator pitch is going to be pretty different than if you were talking to a recruiter. So yeah, it all depends the situation and who you're speaking with. Any other questions? Okay, so we can keep moving and grooving. Okay, so next is just open Q&A time. So are there any other questions? Okay, this is a great question. So how to make small talk at the booth. So let's say, Grace Hopper, it's the career expo. You are standing in line and you make your way up to a recruiter at any given booth, how to stand out. I can start and maybe we can just go back and forth bouncing ideas off of each other, Cindy. And everyone feel free. If you have ideas, please do feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. One thing you can just do is be friendly, smile, be like a happy, excited person. I know that I am at booths a lot and I really just appreciate when people ask me how I'm doing. Sometimes I go through an entire day of being at a booth and ask me how I'm doing or how the conference is going for me. So you can, be like, treat them just like another human and see how they're doing, how they're enjoying the conference. And then by just being, your professional self, by being excited, asking questions, smiling, it really can make a difference.
Yeah, and then I would think I like when people ask like, why are you here? Because oftentimes you're not getting, aside from like people that are recruiters, or if you're at a recruitment fair, you get volunteers or other people that are just there on behalf of like other teams in the organization. And so asking them like, what brought you here? Or, like, why are you here? Grace Hopper is in Orlando. What is your favorite Disney park? Maybe that might be a good question. Or will you be going to Disney? Things that are near, I usually ask. So like here in Chicago, my go-to thing is asking if they've eaten at any restaurants or if they have any favorite restaurants, because we're a big food city. But sort of like keeping it local, that conversation. I think the other thing for me is I ask for LinkedIn's. That is a thing that I do. I connect if it's a company or if it's a person that I feel like I really connected with. Have LinkedIn gives you that QR code on your phone. If you have the app, you can pull it up in 2 seconds, and it takes 2 seconds for someone to scan it, and then you're connected with them forever, so that you're popping up on their newsfeed or vice versa, and your presence is always kind of there even after the conference.
I love that. Yeah, you're reminding me that really all this is just building a connection with another person. So think of that relationship building. To Cindy's point, you can ask the question like, what's your we're close to Disney. What's your favorite Disney park? Just kind of opens up the conversations, allows you to like get to know each other, have some fun banter. Maybe wearing a really cool t-shirt. You're like, hey, what is that? Can you tell me more about, what your t-shirt is all about? I think people really appreciate just like genuine conversations. And then really know what you're looking for. Don't be afraid to ask it. So if you're having a conversation, say, I know a lot about MongoDB. I really I love the culture that you have there. I love the product. I actually use it with some of my personal projects. How would you recommend that I get my foot in the door for an interview? Right? Being direct, ask question, not just asking for an interview, but what is your advice to get an interview? that can really open up the conversation for to say, hey, like, you should, here's a referral link, or this is the page where you should go, or hey, we're having an after conference party. You should join. You should come. Here's the RSVP link. That can be helpful. Let's see. And then we have another question. Can you tell us, how would you do your elevator pitch as a job seeker at Grace Hoppers, just so we can get an idea through examples? This is a really good question. So some of you might be looking for internships. Some of you might be looking for full-time jobs. I really recommend looking at the list of companies that will be at Grace Hopper and make a plan of like a priority list of the companies that you want to visit in the Career Expo, just so when you do get to the chaos of the Career Expo, you feel ready with a game plan. And then you can also have some notes for yourself for each of the companies of, oh, I know there's a software engineering internship. I know there's a rotational program here. So you can ask those more direct questions and show them that you've done the research already and you're showing up prepared. You can also, I usually recommend bringing at least 30 physical copies of your resume so that you can hand them directly to recruiters when you are a Grace Hopper. There are a select number of companies that will do interviews on the spot. So by being prepared, by being direct, and by being friendly and kind, it can be successful to get an interview on the spot at Grace Hopper. For an example, it could be as simple as, hi, my name's Bree. I'm from Chicago. I really love working on technologies that, create a better experience for people every day. I have previously interned at companies like X and Y and really love being on teams where you get to be creative and solve really exciting problems. I think that the problems that you all are solving at fill in the blank company is really exciting. I would love to be a part of it. So I want to hear from you. I'm applying for internships for next summer. I saw there's a software engineering internship. How can I put my best foot forward? Okay, so you're prepared. It's specific about the company. You're also selling yourself, not just of what you've done, but what you're excited about. What are you really good at? Anything that you asked, Cindy?
Aside from, like you said, research ahead and really just you have to, and I see there's a kind of a question, like how many companies can someone really cover? Well, I think that's where I don't know if you have access to this, but like look at what they're hiring for. That may help really sort of narrow down the companies that you're going towards. Hop on their job boards and look, are there openings for the positions that you're looking for? Because if not, then you could probably just skip them or drop your resume, but really be intentional. So maybe that 3 to 5, like I said, pick 3 to 5 that are your top. Maybe the top 3 are huge, big tech companies, and you'll pick another 3 smaller tech companies. And really examine why you want to work at that place. Perhaps it's just as simple as the benefits. Like they have really great benefits and their payroll is just amazing. But maybe there's something else that draws you to that mission, their values. Do that research online. I will say during my journey, I did study the core values of the company that I work for now, and I applied that to when I was talking. Hey, I use the core value of be humble and stay hungry when I do this, because I do LinkedIn learning courses in addition to my job. I hold myself and my colleagues accountable. This is another core value of my company when I do this process. And so when you start speaking like that and really you don't put that anxiety on you to like try to please 100 different people or different companies. When you narrow it down to those 3 to 5 or 6 companies and you really become an expert in them, that will not only make you stand out, but it will give you that edge that you need to, because they see you are invested, you've done the work, right? They don't have to do the whole pitching to you the different things, but they know that you're there. And you're also assuring that there's a role for you there. So there is some research that goes into it if you do want to make the most out of this, because I agree. I do think larger conferences can be overwhelming, especially when everybody wants to get to the big companies. So I would also keep that in mind. Everybody wants to go to the top ones. Look at the smaller ones and begin to research the roles or the core values or the mission of that company or the work that they're doing, so that you do find a stepping stone there, or that you can connect with someone there, as opposed to trying to walk up to Meta and just being like, hey, I use Facebook all the time. You know, like I really want to be a part of this, without diving into why you want to be a part of it.
Completely agree. That really helps answer the next question, which is, our networking approach be different for big companies, size/small companies? For example, the why are you interested in this company? There's just so much going on with tech. Research tends to impress recruiters/hiring managers. So I think exactly to Cindy's point, when you have done the research, you are able to point out to specifics so the company knows, hey, this person actually is interested in working here. They're not just stopping by every single booth and saying the same exact thing for one. That's really helpful. That thing, I don't know if you all are all about user personas, but that can be another helpful activity here. Designers and UX researchers often use user personas to figure out how to design a certain product or platform. So thinking about the who behind who's using this product, think of a user persona for who that company is trying to hire. Right. So there are only companies who really like hiring people who are super competitive, who want to be their best, who, you know, and they tend to hire a lot of athletes, for example, because those are also competitive people, work really hard, want to be their best, want their team to be the best. There are other companies where it's collaboration. They like people who are really top team players, who are able to communicate actively, who are kind, supportive people. So that's a completely different user personas. So think about, you know, if I was a recruiter for this company, based on what I know from doing my research, I tie that nice bow around myself in a way that's different from the bow that I tie for myself for a different role or a different company, you know, because we all have different sides to ourselves. And then I will be attending Grace Hopper in person. How many companies can someone really cover? There are long queues. So you can have the best plan for Grace Hopper or any other large conference, and it will probably not go 100% to plan. So be flexible, but plan as much as possible. So this is where you may have a list of the companies where you're saying, I have to stop by these companies. I will not leave the conference without stopping by these 10 companies. Maybe then you have another list of, I would like to stop by these companies. And then a final list of nice haves, or, you know, if I have time, it would be nice to visit these companies. If I'm not able to visit these companies, I won't be extremely upset, right? Having those types of lists will be helpful because things will happen. There will be, you know, your friends get really excited about a speaker. They're like, hey, you got to come to this. You weren't originally planning on it, but, you know, things that happen, the lines are longer than possible. Maybe lunch took longer than you thought. Maybe, you know, you needed to take some time to just rest that you didn't prepare for. Just preparing yourself with those lists can be really helpful. And it's all balanced, right? So do you want to spend the entire conference at the Career Expo? It's okay if the answer is yes. That would optimize, you'll be able to speak to the largest number of employers. But, maybe that's not the only thing you want to do. Maybe try to think, I want to spend 20% of my time at the Career Expo and then 40% of the time at speaker sessions and the other percent of the time just doing, informal networking. Maybe try and figure out a plan for yourself there.
Yeah, burnout is definitely, it'll happen at these conferences, especially because you have to shift personas, I think, so much. Like, you're in a panel and you're quiet and you're active listening. Then you're in a recruiting room and it's like, you need to talk, you need to do your elevator pitch, you need to connect. So I think that is also great advice, is being intentional with where you want to spend your time. It is really great to like sign up for every panel, but if you can't commit to fully being there, it may be worth looking at your agenda and saying, like, which one of these could I drop out of to give myself that sort of space that I need. And there is another question or another comment in the chat I was going to add, actually along the lines is, yes, I was going to say you leverage LinkedIn. So for these companies that you are looking for, especially the smaller ones, look at the employees on there, connect with them, right? Because like I said, you want to see what their past employment history was like, right? How did they leverage their role into there? Is this company hiring people that are transitioning? Are they hiring people that are just really seasoned and coming in from other roles? But LinkedIn is a great resource. I use it a lot as well. So for the conference I did in Philadelphia, where I knew nobody, I just started looking at people that were reacting to sort of the promos, connecting with them, letting them know, hey, so excited. I will also be attending the conference. I will be there on this day. Hopefully we can connect, but use that, look up the company, look at people on LinkedIn. When you're connecting, leave a note and say, hey, I will be at Grace Hopper. I'm excited to interact with your booth on this day, because that is another way that when you get there, you can say, hey, I spoke to so-and-so at your company. I connected, I let them know, that I'm here at Grace Hopper, and boom, you've just established a relationship where they're like, of course I know Joe, like Joe is great. He's this great guy. But definitely leverage LinkedIn as a resource.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Next question. So how to network before Grace Hopper. Next, there will be a pre-GHC networking opportunity that's open to anyone who has the premium account. So that's a really great opportunity to practice your networking, maybe meet some people before the conference. And then, you can put that you'll be attending Grace Hopper in your little tagline on LinkedIn, so that when you connect with people before, during, after Grace Hopper, they see that and they recognize, oh, I met this person at Grace Hopper. And then we probably have time for one more question really quickly. So the last question is, what kind of information should I try to gather if I'm just looking to learn how I can make it to a company? What can I boost on my profile? What should I elevator pitch? What should my elevator pitch look like? I am already employed, but do not feel very prepared for big tech. But how can I leverage my time at Grace Hopper to learn as much as possible? This is a big question for only a couple of minutes. You have a couple maybe ideas to start us with, Cindy?
Yes. So once again, kind of like doing that pre-work is really important here. And I think this is just my experience as well. I think what makes it difficult to maybe interact with larger tech companies is the fact that things are so widespread, right? So you're dealing with a specific person in a region, and they're dealing with another person that is their global manager, and it's very impersonal. I think there are a lot more opportunities with smaller companies because all of the employees basically know of each other. So when you start connecting with those people, I think it's easier to plant those relationships with smaller tech companies. But if you're looking, I would ask what you're looking for from a bigger company. So once again, are you looking just for the opportunity to work on a more global scale? Are you looking for growth opportunities that you don't have at your current company? I would be very intentional with what it is you're looking for. Do you just want to work with things that, you know, are much bigger, or do you want to be like a smaller piece in a bigger machine? I would look at what the reason is that why you want to join. Do you want to make a difference? Is there something that you're looking to change or leverage in that company? I think there is a draw, right? Like we have this like love for corporate companies and these huge things and all of the fancy fun perks or swag that comes with them. But I myself work for like a smaller company that is global, and I thought the same thing, like how can I get bigger? How can I go somewhere that's bigger? But I'm recognizing that there is a lot of intention and a lot of opportunity with smaller companies, because there is opportunity to do more. Whereas in a larger company, all of that is already set, and there's this like pyramid, upside down pyramid of processes that has to happen and things. So I would just say being intentional with what it is that you're looking for from those bigger corporations and being really honest. So like maybe you're just looking for growth, like maybe you're just over it, you're not getting promoted, there's no opportunity in that smaller company, but look at them and say, hey, I can take on more, I can do this, I'm looking for ways to expand my skill set. Maybe you're looking to transition departments and there's just no opening and you want to go somewhere bigger. Just be very direct with whatever it is that you're looking to get out of that larger company, because exactly how you're sort of assuming, you're right, it's huge. They talk to a ton of people. There are, I mean, so many people are coming up to them just saying, hey, I want to work here, and not saying this is exactly what I want to do for you here, which they will remember and value a lot more, as opposed to just, hey, I just want to join this, I want to join Discover because I love the credit card and I hear you guys got great benefits. But going in there and saying, you know, I noticed Discover has opportunity to leverage data and analytics for marketing or to increase the number of credit card users, things like that. And I'm just freeing it right now, freeballing it. But be really intentional with what it is that you want to do for them and what you can do for them. And I think that should be helpful.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you for wrapping us up, Cindy. So we're so thankful that you joined us today. This is a topic that we're both really passionate about. I know we both shared with you that, you know, we started our journey feeling very unsure about ourselves, especially when networking, presenting, and speaking. And now we are able to do it much more confidently and authentically. So we want to spread the love and make sure that everyone's able to be their best selves in these types of situations. We do want to call out, if you are going to Grace Hopper, check out the QR code here. We have these amazing women in tech shirts and apparel at codeyourdreams.org/store. I will be repping them during the Grace Hopper conference. As you can see here, Kimberly Bryant is one of our amazing women in tech on the t-shirts. She will be speaking at Grace Hopper. I could not be more excited. I am going to be first in line to meet Kimberly Bryant. She is my hero. But overall, please connect with Cindy and I on LinkedIn. I feel really grateful that I'm able to work with Cindy. I really look up to her. Everyone knows Cindy. It's like, no matter where I am, it's like Cindy is there and she's a board member or she's a volunteer. It's incredible. So I love, Cindy, that you're able to join me here. So definitely take our contact information. Lastly, if you will be at Grace Hopper, say hi, come to the Pitch Her competition. I'd love to see some friendly faces in the audience, as I will be super anxious doing my pitch. And if you are feeling like you need a pep talk or want some advice when you are at Grace Hopper, please feel free to shoot me a message. I'll be Monday, Saturday, so I'm happy to meet up and just have a brainstorm or discuss with you. And words from you, Cindy.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for joining us. I will not, unfortunately, not be at Grace Hopper this year, but hoping to connect with some of you on LinkedIn. please feel free to reach out if you have any other further questions. I'm happy to help and be a resource, or even if you're just looking for other resources to connect to, I'd love to connect you to those. Thank you for joining us. I am so honored that Bree asked me to do this with her because I love all the work that she does. And so I hope that all of you have a great experience and that this was super helpful. And I look forward to seeing you all thrive.
Wonderful. And yes, this is being recorded, so we'll make sure to share the link with everyone. So with that, have an amazing Friday, have a great weekend, and hopefully see some of you at Grace Hopper. Bye.
Thanks.